Welcome to Mint Views. The country is going through grim times. And today we are going to discuss a speech made by Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Wednesday on the occasion of Atal Bihari Vajpayee's birth anniversary. He was speaking in Lucknow. He issued a very stern warning to protesters who are willing to destroy public property and go on a riot. Alongside, he made an appeal for peace in his very own style. The question we have today for debate is whether the Prime Minister's words will have a calming effect on the country amidst all the protests against the Citizenship Amendment Bill, or could it perhaps actually perchance worsen the situation and polarize things even further, given his harsh words? That's what we're going to talk about tonight. And Shrija, what do you think?
So, Arish, as the PM has already mentioned, and you've also brought it out in an introduction, that he's also urged people to, and he's also sent out a message for peace. In the sense, he's appealed to maintain peace. So, given the fact that protests are the right to dissent, the right to show that you're not, you stand sort of contrary to what the government is saying, it's definitely a fundamental, it's definitely a right which is enshrined in the Constitution. But at the same time, it also represents the argumentative spirit of a democracy. But at the same time, you cannot resort to violence which is mindless, which is brash, and which is completely illegitimate, because you see instances such as where, the very currency of protest has been to deface and damage the public property, and we have seen that going throughout, areas, in all the areas where protest has been happening, torching of buses, people damaging, buildings, hitting the buses, and also it has led to so much of problems for the mere commuters. So in a larger sense, this sort of protest definitely sort of clamp down on the normal life. So I would say that protesters should have the right, and definitely there is a right for protesters to make their voices heard. I mean, that's your freedom of expression and speech. But at the same time, you also need to be mindful that what sort of damage you're causing.
Violence, of course, is never justified. What would you say, Anant?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very delicate situation right now. We don't know which way things will turn. But the hope is that people see sense in what the Prime Minister is saying. After all, as you said, violence cannot be condoned. And in any form, for any reason that you get violent, it cannot be justified. You have to protest in peaceful means. So, it's a very delicate situation. But the point is, the government has to maintain a balance. They can't allow protests to go to such a scale that people come out on the streets and create anarchy. In such a situation, law and order would be completely trampled upon, and there would be no sense of a democracy left if we let that continue. So to a certain extent, the heavy-handed approach or a stern warning that the Prime Minister has given, hopefully it should drive some sense into people that if you do something which is going to cause damage to public property or to lives, so many people have died, then there are costs to be paid for that, and you'll be presented before justice. You'll have to be brought before the courts. So that is a good thing to do, but at the same time, they need to be cautious that they don't do it excessively, in the sense that it provokes further protests against a heavy-handed approach of the government. So it's a very delicate balance. How the situation evolves would depend on how exactly the government manages this balance.
Mm-hmm. As it turns out, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also kind of endorsed the methods being used by the Yogi Adityanath government in Uttar Pradesh, where a lot of people have been alleged to have died in police firing. Although we are very unclear about the facts on the ground, there does seem to be some evidence that there has been a very heavy crackdown on the part of the UP police. Rohit, would you have something to say about this?
Yeah, I think the police should have maybe exercised some restraint in their crackdown on the protesters, because from what I can make of our Prime Minister's words, he's tried to appeal to a sense of reason of the protesters, but I think that will work only if there's a restraint on both sides, on the sides of the government, of the authorities, and on the side of the protesters too.
Correct. Now, I don't think anyone is exactly suggesting that anyone has a right to take the law into their own hands, least of all violent mobs. They have no business destroying public property. They have no business doing what they're doing. The question is, how do we resolve this? Because at this moment, it seems to have turned into a political issue. And here, the words of the Prime Minister and his approach and what he's saying, each and every sentence he utters becomes very, very crucial, becomes very important. And it's still not very clear whether we still need a further effort to calm down tempers in this situation. Like I said, the country is going through grim times. All across WhatsApp and various social media platforms, the so-called Muslim question is being discussed. These are grim times for the country, and we do hope that we will get equanimity and peace as soon as we can. Thank you.